Poland has activated its air force because of concern over western Ukraine under heavy bombardment. Well, the attack in Moscow comes at a very bizarre moment, the exact moment, of course, when Congress was just about to vote on a $1.2 trillion budget that very mysteriously had no money for Ukraine in it, but it did have tons of money for Israel and LGBTQ plus causes, as well as cataloging and monitoring cattle in the United States using digital identification, but no money for Ukraine. So all of this comes at a very interesting moment. Just put a pin in that for a moment. We'll talk more about it in a second. Following, of course, the terror attack in Moscow that killed 137 people, including 4 children, the gloves are now off overnight. Russia's launched a series of major attacks in buildings in downtown Kyiv, hitting Ukrainian security service buildings. That's been confirmed on the Ukrainian side. Russia's also struck energy infrastructure. And according to reports this morning, Poland has activated its air force because of concern over western Ukraine under heavy bombardment. So are we entering a new phase? And are the gloves off for President Putin? There's been a lot of criticism, of course, of Putin that maybe things have gone a little too slowly on his side. Colonel Douglas Macgregor is a former Pentagon advisor to Donald Trump. He's the CEO of Our Country, Our Choice. And in moments like this, there's no one I'd rather turn to make sense of this craziness than Colonel Macgregor, whose vast combat experience and Pentagon experience could speak volumes for us. Colonel, great to see you as always.
Sure, good to see you, Morris.
So let's talk about what your initial response is to this. It seems like the West was quick to jump on the idea that this was ISIS, and even other newspapers out of Australia were saying, don't believe anything Putin says. Clearly, this was Putin that launched this attack, just like he blew up his own Nord Stream pipeline. Just like any other attack that happens in Moscow, he's dropping drones on his own residential buildings. So this was Putin. What did you make of the initial response to this and now Putin's response in the immediate aftermath?
Well, understanding the Western commentary and response, and actually the event itself, requires that you understand 2 key points right now that most people in the West are not getting. The first is that Zelensky and his regime is the equivalent of a fatally wounded animal that is dying. And as a result, it will strike out with whatever it has to the bitter end at this point, rather than essentially surrender, give up, and negotiate. So think of Zelensky's regime as a dying entity. Will grasp at anything he can find. He has no real capability left on the ground. He can barely defend what he's got on the ground. And so he's turning to other forms of action, like this terrorist attack, or the use of more drones against Russian targets in Russia itself.